So, in terms of, are there any game topics or game design topics to bring up here? Again, without Rob on, I'm kind of just like talking all the time. I guess here's a question. Very quickly, does anyone have a game design topic they'd like me to cover while I drink the remaining amount of water in my cup here? I just realized how exciting this is for me just sitting here drinking water on stream. Yeah, there was a Rambo video game. 2D pixeling games? Do you mean about like the pixel art coda or something else? And the RNG. Well, RNG is always a popular topic. Hold on. I muted my mic there while I did that whole little coughing. Was it easier to make games in the past or today? That's actually a good one there, Janshevik. That, I think, is something that I wish we had a developer on for it. And RNG, how it randomizes. Yeah. It's definitely a give and take. I remember when I spoke with the person Rob introduced me to. What was it? Bill Fisher, who that cast will be going up in a few weeks. Excuse me. Who worked on Intellivision. He's doing the revival now. He said, of course, that it is easier today for sure. Again, with more tools, more powerful tools, you can do stuff on your smartphone that people would have dreamed of doing on the most expensive computer 20, 30 years ago. But there's always room for more. There's always that push to do more with technology, to do more with game design. So people back then were complaining about how am I supposed to fit things with, 1 megabyte of memory. You'll have developers today saying, how am I going to make my game with 16 gigs of RAM or 16 gigs of memory requirements? It's just too little. The tools is definitely, I think, a major part of growing things out, and that could be a topic in of itself in terms of that perception of the use of tools. Again, if Mike was on, I'm sure he would be talking about this right now, or he may be leaving a comment about that as we speak. Yep. Exactly, Janshvik. The tools weren't accessible. Again, back during the late 80s, or I'm sorry, even earlier than that, we talk 70s into the 90s, maybe into the early thousands, there was no attempt at standardization or making this stuff up, or making this. You were basically trying to retrofit traditional computer programming into video games. I still remember the story of Richard Garriott doing the original release of Ultima. I remember him just like saying, he described it as him, copying things to floppy disks, putting a label on a Ziploc bag saying Ultima Disc 1, and then selling it at his local game store, putting it up at an electronic boutique, or for those of you who remember, Babbage's back in the day. And yeah, it's gone back then. Again, there was no such thing as game designer, or even the term game design. Everybody who got into the game industry, or who were building games, were programmers, and that was it. Because you couldn't build a game any other way. Yeah, that would be nice, too. I would love to get, I don't know, Arcane on. Arcane Studios, the guys who did Prey. Especially after playing System Shock 2 last night. And it's very interesting about how things have moved forward in terms of technology and standardization because of how rapid technology has advanced. Oh, cool. And speaking of going from System Shock to BioShock to Prey, you can see how things have evolved and how things have become standardized. Is game developing hard? Oh, that's like a 3-hour topic right there. I gave an hour-long presentation to parents about it. I think again, like, people will say different things depending upon their own knowledge. Like I've said before, I don't like when people say just make games and everything will succeed. I think making a quality game is hard. Now, of course, even just making a very simplistic title is challenging as well. And the challenge is the fact that there are no standards when it comes to the game industry in terms of what is and what isn't a video game, what engines to use, what is even good and bad design is up for debate. Now, independent development really didn't become what we know today until probably maybe like around like early 2010, maybe a little bit beforehand. Again, for people who are on the younger side, most of what we know about indie development or what we've seen with indie games came with the rise of Steam. For pretty much the last decade, up until like 2007, 2008, people were considering PC gaming to be dead. There were so many articles of the companies saying that the Xbox is going to kill the PC, and we're all going to see all the PC games move over to Xbox. But then, of course, Valve really blew up with Steam, and the rest is history. Now, there were independent developers, of course, in the 90s, most famously Introversion and Crow Team, and of course Spireweb Software. But the market was nowhere near where it was at. And it was very hard for an independent developer to get their foot in the door because you had nobody in your corner. You were never going to see something like the original, Uplink from Introversion. If anyone's ever played that game, that was not going to be sold at a major store unless it got a publisher. And I think they eventually did. Let me see. They did eventually get published by Strategy First and Stardock for a time. But games like Cave Story, for instance, like Cave Story was the first indie game to really show the mass market just what everybody was missing. And then, of course, that blew up even further with the Xbox Summer of Games event when they were celebrating independent developers like Edmund McMillan, Jonathan Blow, of course, Phil Fish, and basically everyone on, I think, Indie Game the Movie was part of that big push. But they were really the first big wave of indie developers getting mainstream approval. And independent, or the indie scene, has been a big part of how game design has changed. It has really motivated a lot of people to get into game development. Because again, you don't need 60 to 100 man teams and $5 to $10 million of budget to make a video game these days. I mean, we've seen 5 people or less studios making impressive games. Yep, exactly, gaming. Again, Steam's impact on the game industry is monumental. And regardless of what you think of Steam or Valve as a company, they have done so much for the game industry. And I mean, they're one of those companies like Blizzard that they have earned almost like infinite clout among gamers because of it. Yep. And it's that very weird thing. I mean, Steam is the company that kind of brought independent developers to the forefront 6-7 years ago. They basically did, Janshevik. They really did. Again, for people who are on the younger side, they don't remember how things were going over the last decade. But with the rise of the Xbox, and the Xbox being the most powerful platform at that time, and of course being backed by Microsoft, who they have a little bit of money to throw around, a lot of people thought that PC gaming was going to die. But, and of course another big issue, of course, and this is probably a topic in of itself, is just all the little foibles and annoying quirks of PC games. The fact that you have to open up your PC and install new parts, having to keep things maintained and updated. It's not as simple as just putting a CD or DVD into your console and playing a game. But the point is that for the people who do that, they are, of course, warranted a lot more freedom. Hence the rise of modding, the whole being able to play any PC game, complete conversions, piracy, of course, while it may be bad, is still a very popular practice on PC. And it goes back to what we were talking about, or when I did that video on the Steam box, that as console and PC development has become more connected over this last decade, that it's really, we're seeing a lot more standardization. Exactly, Ogor. I would love to get someone on for that. You know who I would love to talk to as a bit of a tangent? Long War Studios. They're the ones who made the Long War Total Conversion or Partial Conversion mod for XCOM, and how that blew up for them. You know, maybe I'll send them an email when we're done with the stream, because they would be very interesting to talk to say the least. But one of the big things, I think this goes back to what I was saying, to your point there, Yantra, about Steam saving PC gaming. During the last decade, and even in the 90s, PC and console support were two completely separate entities. Because they were using completely different engines and completely different programming for it, it became very hard to see these games being ported over. This is why a lot of the games that did make that jump usually had a superior version. You weren't going to play the version of Doom 2 on the Super Nintendo if you had the PC version. And what happened was, because of that, we had that separation. This is why a lot of people were thinking that the PC industry was going to die, because there was such a big push during the thousands for console gaming. And again, if you can play top tier games on your console and not have to worry about a PC, why would you need the PC at that time? But as tools and these engines have become more standardized, again, Unity, Game Maker, Unreal, I'm sure there's a few more I'm forgetting right now, it's becoming a lot easier to port these games. It's still hard. Again, if I say that it's easy to port a game from PC to Nintendo Switch, I'm going to have about 15 programmers, and probably Mike as well, yelling at me in the comments below about it. But it has become a lot easier. And because of that, we are seeing that separation subside. This is another topic we could rant on about for the next few minutes, but the fact that the Switch has been courting indie developers this past year is huge. And we're even seeing more independent or indie games on PS4 and I believe on Xbox One as well. And again, this wouldn't be possible if it wasn't easy to get these games over. Let me see. And what is our time anyway? Oh my goodness, I've been talking for an hour straight. Or I should say 59 minutes and 30 seconds, considering I drank that water for a full 30 seconds. Yep. And again, I'll get to your point in a second, Coda, about the Steam box. I was really thinking that would do better. But again, it occupies a very weird market. Because the console side is now getting PC games. And the PC side, they're not going to spend money for a lesser PC if they have the knowledge or know-how to build their own, or have the money to buy, an Alienware or a Razer. Is Razer a PC brand? Exactly. If I would say this, Alberto, if we didn't see that combining of console and PC, or that standardization, I bet the Steam box would have done better. Like, if you couldn't get games like Don't Starve, The Binding of Isaac, Enter the Gungeon, and so forth on consoles, it would be a lot more appealing for them. But again, things went in a completely different direction. And going back to one other point regarding Steam, what El Gordo was saying about 10-15 minutes, I think at this rate, about how independent developers are not too happy about Steam. It's a weird situation here, because we're seeing the fact that discoverability is very much down on Steam. I mean, for those of you watching this segment recorded, we did our weird games release section earlier, and it is hard to separate a game like Russian Subway Dogs, which looks like it's a legitimate game, where it is one, compared to something like what was it, Hentai Battle Royale. But it's getting harder and harder to do this, and you need to do more to succeed. And going back to your question earlier, Coda, about is game development hard, there's a lot more you need to do to succeed in game development these days. Especially if you're doing it on your own. You have to understand marketing. You have to understand playtesting, PR. And again, I see a lot of first-time developers struggle with this stuff. And I've said this before, I guess I'll say it again, a good game is not enough anymore for your title to succeed. For instance, with the... I'll get your point in a second, Algoro. But like with the Binding of Isaac, they just succeeded in a ridiculously successful Kickstarter. Let me pull that up really fast. And I was so tempted to pledge to it, but I just didn't have the money to spend on something that I would probably never play. Let me see. What did he get? Who wants to take a guess right now as to how much the Binding of Isaac Kickstarter made? Last call. Any guesses? 3, 2, 1. He asked for $50,000, and he got $2,650,875 for his tabletop take on Binding of Isaac. And a lot of that was due to Edmund not only doing marketing for it, but the stretch goal promotions were brilliant. He was doing a lot in terms of getting people interested and getting more rewards, and oh my god, there's so many stretch content that was added to this Kickstarter. It is insane what they've added to it. Let me see here. They have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Wait, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. 18 different stretch content that was added to it. Damn. Yep. And I know tabletop games are a lot more expensive than it takes in some cases to make a digital game when it comes to the distribution or the manufacturing side, but that is insane. Yep. And yep, and that's also true. Or going back to your point about the Switch, that yes, they are getting lots of indie games, but they're getting the top indie games. Again, we're not seeing something like, oh, I know, we're not going to be seeing Asura on Nintendo Switch anytime soon. We're going to be seeing Dead Cells, of course. I mean, that's a given. I mean, it was already announced. We've seen Binding of Isaac, but the problem is that, again, Nintendo is still being the gatekeeper. And they're saying they want a lot more indie games, but I just wonder in a year from now, are we going to be seeing the exact same issue that there's too many indie games on Steam anymore? But getting back to your question there, Coda, how do you feel about pay-to-win stuff? Again, I am not a fan of pay-to-win elements at all. They are always that red flag for me in terms of whether or not I'm going to enjoy a game. And I've been talking to Ramin about this. We're going to try to get him back on for another chat. But again, it's always the stuff that's aimed at the whales or the people with very poor impulse control, and it ultimately hurts the game more in the process. Yeah, and going back to Elgoro's point there, for those of you who don't know the story, Edmund originally he originally wanted to get the Binding of Isaac on the Wii, on the Wii Virtual Store, and Nintendo turned it down due to it being controversial and polarizing. Again, the whole religious overtones and poop, piss, vomit, and all that other lovely stuff in the game, Nintendo said no to it. But they were more than happy to have them on the Nintendo Switch. Which, if that isn't a win for Edmund, I can't think of what else would be. And I'm being distracted right now because I'm still staring at Edmund's Kickstarter page. I gotta get off this before my mind just reels at all that stuff that he's putting into it. But again, like, oh, here's another example, Cultist Simulator. I really liked it, but I highly doubt they're going to bring that game to Nintendo Switch. And it's going to be very telling to see if we get those weird games. Again, the titles that you don't normally see. Because the problem when it comes, one of the beautiful things about the console and PC integration is that we're seeing more of these games make that jump. But on the other hand, it's basically like you're jumping from one shark-infested water to another one. Because now, a game like Asura, or Isaac, or Enter the Gungeon, now they're sitting next to games like Horizon Zero Dawn, Halo, Breath of the Wild, Mario Odyssey. And now you really have to fight. Because you're competing with the top tier first and second party games from these companies. And it's not going to be easy for them to, show people that. Because we've said this before, but while things have become standardized, it's become a lot harder for developers to really show the value of their game. Because when you have a game like Enter the Gungeon right here on PSN, and it's right next to Horizon Zero Dawn, most people are going to look at those two games and go, why the hell should I play Gungeon when there's this beautiful looking game right here? And that's a topic, again, we could spend, or I could rant on about for another 30-40 minutes. But getting back to Coda's question, if anyone has anything else they want to ask, get it in now, or otherwise we'll wrap it up after this. We've definitely been seeing that pushback regarding loot boxes in the game industry. And let me see, there was a news piece the other day about how, I think in the Netherlands, they've changed how the loot boxes work. Let me see here. Where is it? Yep. That is definitely true. Oh, what is going on here with Gamma Sutra? Where is it? There's the VR. I don't know what's going on with Gamma Sutra these days. It seems to be acting up. I don't know. Maybe I'll type this in. Alright, so they're enforcing the loot box ban in the Netherlands. Let's see. No, you can only purchase one loot box. They remove the ability to trade. So now they cannot open anything at all. And I know they're trying to do more with that. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I've definitely played a lot more of Isaac than I did of Horizon Zero Dawn. Hell, I play more of Enter the Gungeon than I did Horizon Zero Dawn at this point. But ultimately, it's always great to see these games get more release, because the more people who can view your game gives you obviously the greater chance of more people buying it. Like, I would love to see Viva Pinata and Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts re-released on the PC. You have no idea how much I would love to play those games again. But, again, they came out during that weird era when the only way you could play them was on Games for Windows Live. And everybody loved that digital platform. But, wrapping things up, when it comes to the pay-to-win side of things, it remains to be seen if we're going to... it's a weird appeal. I would love to do a video on it if we could ever get that going. I'll get to your point in a second, Jankovic. When it comes to the pay-to-win side of things, that the whole pushback against loot boxes, I think, has caused a lot of developers and publishers to go into crisis mode. And while it's still being looked at as somewhat favorable on the mobile side, it's going to, I don't think we're going to be seeing it all that much on the PC or the traditional console or platform. But it does raise that question, what is next in terms of pay-to-win elements? You can, of course, see pre-order bonuses, get 10,000 extra resources or a unique gun. But I think one thing you have to say about the core gaming audience is that they are very smart when it comes to that kind of content. If they smell any pay-to-win elements, they are getting the hell out of there. What? I want to say there was a game based off of the Magic the Gathering property. But I don't remember for sure. Let me see. Let's check the Wikipedia. Magic the Gathering. There's a real-time strategy game made in 1997. There's an arcade game released in 97. Magic the Gathering Online. There's a Magic the Gathering Battlegrounds released in 2003 that didn't do so well. Duel of the Planewalker, I'm sure that's a card-based game. Turn-based strategy. More Planewalkers. Yeah, I think you're right. Other than like the arcade game that was more of a fighting game, and the RTS, it really hasn't been anything else like that. Yeah, again, when you have those properties, but although you do have a point, isn't Magic the Gathering, they are owned... Oh, I'm sorry. I'm confusing Games Workshop with Wizards of the Coast. Oh, God. I just pissed off two mega companies right there. Yeah. You would think that they would have it, but I think the brand may be hard to associate it because of the fact that it is just based on that card system. But what was I about to say about yeah, like with Warhammer, that brand allows, I think, for a lot more in terms of characters and situations. I mean, I played Space Hulk, and I played Space Hulk long before I ever heard of the 40K universe. But I think with that, we are getting a little bit long here, and it is kind of hard for me to talk all by myself, and I still need to record the new audio for the intro. So I think we'll wrap it up here, but thank you guys for the topics. Maybe we'll do another one of these again if Rob, like the next time Rob isn't able to make it. But we're going to wrap things up for this week's episode of Game Wisdom Live. So I'd like to thank everyone new and old for coming on. If you're new and want to continue talking about game design, you'll find our Discord channel link down below. It is open to everyone at the basic tier. If you like our talks ad-free and uncut, yeah, I know. Be sure to check out our Patreon, patreon.com/GWBycer. $5 or more will get you VIP access to our live talks.